we're going to be covering image creation, character consistency, animation, editing, sound design, and music, which basically is the whole process, except from storytelling. And if you have any questions regarding any of these steps, you can leave them in the comments, and I'll try to go into more detail on each of them in future videos. Hi everybody, thanks for joining in. I'm Eike. And also thank you for watching my recent short films. And I've just opened this channel and it's going really well. I didn't expect that. Thanks so much. You've been asking so many questions regarding my workflow of creating these little AI short films, and I promised to put out some tutorials. So this is the first one, and it's going to be a rough overview of the whole workflow. Anything else? Oh yes, if you've been enjoying my content so far but haven't done so yet, it would be really cool if you could subscribe and hit the little bell so that the algorithm can spread this out to even more people, which would be really nice. Alright, let's jump in. So here we are in Midjourney. One of the questions I often am getting is like how I create consistent characters. So let's show you this. For example, in this bathroom scene here, what I did first was to create several bathroom scenes of women in a bathroom looking at the mirror until I found some I liked. So I went with this one as a reference, and then I also used my image of her from Float. Actually, that's from Float. She looks a bit tired here. And I combined them. So in Midjourney, as you may know, you can use different reference images. And in style reference, what it will do, it will kind of use the style of the image it references and create something new following your prompt. And then I used my character for the Omni reference, which is used to keep consistent faces. And I put a prompt in there. Over-shoulder shot of a young woman in front of a mirror in a small bathroom in the evening. Her shoulder and her hair is out of focus. Just in the corner of the image, we see her what? We see her face in the mirror. Pretty simple. And then I ran it, and the result were these. So I did this several times, as you can see, until I found one. Some didn't work, of course. I think I used this one for the animation. We can have a look. If we go over to Kling, I didn't start with this one, but yeah, here you can see it is there. I think that's also the one that's in the movie. Yeah, you can see there's only one try. I nailed it the first time. And what did I say? I just said the young woman is looking at her face in the mirror, rubbing her eyes. Handheld over-shoulder camera. So it's like 3 simple prompts, like 3 or 4, sometimes 5 prompts is what Kling is able to do at the moment. So the young woman is looking at her face in the mirror, rubbing her eyes, and then camera position. Over-shoulder camera, handheld. And we get this. These sometimes work and sometimes don't, but that's the general idea. So that's how I do it, basically, throughout the whole thing, right? So there are so many images, and you can really see how many images I'm generating here until I find what I need. It's really a lot. Look at that. Most of them I don't remember. Okay, here's another interesting use case, because in the final scene I wanted the shadow to be on top of my character and they're fighting, which was kind of difficult. So I ended up looking online for images of sleep paralysis terror. So I found this one online, and I used this as a reference to create the final scene of sleep paralysis. I think one of these was the final result I went with, and then I changed the face because initially it had just this face, this black thing. I wanted it to have a little bit more of a face, so I used another reference of Nika's character, which I made, which is this one. A bit scary. And I used it as a style reference once again, and ran it together with the other image to get this result. And there we are. Back to Kling. I think that was much later in the process. Where is it? Oh, here it starts. So we have different versions of this, of them fighting. I wanted it to start really dark and get less brutal over time when she starts to accept it, up to the point where they kind of integrate, which was this one. I still really like it. The prompt for this one was, the woman on bed embraces the black figure, the figure lays its head on her chest, they both start sinking into the mattress, disappear in the glowing light. Handheld camera, fixed position. Fixed position always kind of prevents the camera from moving closer if you don't want that. So that works. What you can also say is, camera keeps a constant distance. I think that's what I sometimes say. Because when you say fixed position, you can also end up like this one, where the camera doesn't move at all. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So then it's not handheld anymore. That's that. What else would I need to tell you about this process? Do you have any questions? Leave them down below. Let's go on. What would be next? Editing, I think. All right, so here we are in the edit. And what I always do is I edit without sound first, and then add the sound later, because I want to make sure the pictures already tell the story I want to tell. And then sound design is just adding to it, like making it deeper, but it has to work without sound. So there we go. First scene, she's waking up, right? That was the original footage. So we have her laying in bed, going up, looking, and yeah, at the end you can see she kind of looks a bit weird here, her eyes. So that's where I cut out. And also it was enough for this scene. And I also started a bit later because I wanted it to start with her jumping up right away. What I also did was I left a few black frames, so it would jump from black to this, her jumping. And then next shot is the clock. The clock was, for some reason, a bit difficult to get a clock that worked in Midjourney, until I had one. It took several tries. And then the one I got, as you can see, it looks quite different. So for this one, I also had to do a bit of color grading, because this blue was much too blue. Which also is a thing I should mention. Maybe I should go into more detail about consistent scenes. If you want to hear about that, leave it in the comments. Because one important part of that is that you kind of have the same color across the scenes. It doesn't have to nail 100%, but it has to be in the same ballpark, because that's something that helps a lot with consistency. So yeah, that's the clock. Then I wanted to establish the room she's in, so I went for this shot, which is a shot I'm using more often. And how I did that I can also tell you later, because I have it sometimes at nighttime, sometimes at daytime, sometimes with her, without her, and with the shadow figure, without the shadow figure, things like that. If you're interested in that, also let me know. Okay, then we have her getting up. I had her walking further, like this shot is longer, of course. Started here, but since she's already sitting on the edge of the bed here, it doesn't make sense if she's coming from back here, obviously. So I had to start here. And it's only a short shot. I was only using it because I wanted to establish the room a little more. Like we have this, then we have this, and then cut to the bathroom, the scene we've already seen. And this is one shot I added later. At first I also had her leaving the room again, which then I thought wasn't necessary, because I wanted her to leave the bathroom in the second bathroom scene, which comes later. She's just looking at the mirror here, which is enough. And yeah, I went on like this. She's back in bed. I wanted her to fall asleep. I wanted to show some time passing, so I added this window. Then fade to black, and boom, we're in. For these scenes, like for all of these, I used some tiny effects that are not so visible, I think, but you know, if you look closely, you will see them. For example, here, to make it more impactful, I inverted the first few frames. How many are it actually? 1, 2, 3. 3 frames inverted. So bam, you have this little flash going here. And then to make the scenes a little more impactful, I also added 1 black frame at each cut. So everywhere is a little black frame, you can see, which is not really visible for the eye, but you still sense it, so it gives you a kind of a something's odd feeling. Something doesn't fit. You can see you hardly see it. It's more like a little black flash as the creature comes out. And for these shots, I basically always use the same image, the same starting image, just with different prompts, you know, like I wanted her to look down. I want her to look over there to the wardrobe. Here I wanted her to not look at all, to just realize, oh my god, it's happening again. And here I wanted her to look down to her fingers. And I think that was it. It's coming closer. Here she's really scared, so I wanted it to zoom in on her face really close. And then she finally manages to move and boom, wakes up. This shot also was a bit difficult, but the first section I needed worked pretty well. But if you look at the whole thing, you see it falls apart pretty quickly. We start here, and then this happens, which are all these things we don't really need. So I just went with this up until here, and then cut to black, which was all I needed. And then she's awake, everything's good again, and she's exhausted. And yeah, I mean, I could go through the whole edit like this, but I think you get the idea. So if you're interested in more details or have questions regarding this, also drop it in the comments. Alright, so once I've went through everything, I started with the voiceover. I made it in 11 laps.
Damn, it happened again.
And actually it's my own voice. I recorded it and then I transformed it in 11 laps with a voice I created in there, which I've also been using for this character in the last movie, Float. And that's pretty simple to do. I can show you this in a different video if you're interested. But yeah, what I did then is step by step adding the voiceover, and as I was adding it, I sometimes felt like, okay, the edit has to change a little. For example, that's when I discovered that I don't want her to leave the bathroom here. Also, the original voiceover was much longer, but I threw out everything where I felt like it's either already apparent from what you see, or it's kind of distracting, or it doesn't really push the story forward. That's an important thing I'm always trying to think of when I make movies, like with every shot. I have to answer the question, how does it help to move the story forward? And if it doesn't, it's gonna be cut out. Even if I love the image itself, but if it doesn't transport the story forward in any way, it has to leave. And that's how you can make things more dense and how you can really focus on what you're trying to tell instead of just losing yourself in beautiful images, which is also fair. It also has its place, but not if you want to tell a narrative story that really catches the viewer and keeps him interested, you know. And that's what I'm trying to do. So, all right. And so I went through the voiceover. once that was done, I started with sound design. And sound design, I mean, there are some models that already produce sound, like VO3, and now also Kling does it. But so far it's not really there yet. The sound is often low quality, or it doesn't really fit. And I think the sound is very important for such little films. So I have different ways of doing it. One is I'm working with this little field recorder, but you can also do it with your smartphone or whatever. And I'll just record the stuff myself. So, like, for example, actually, that's all me in my bed, jumping up just like she does in the images. And then, so that it doesn't sound like me, I went here and pitched it up to semitones so that it's a little higher, like so. And I did it like that for everything, basically. Like, this ticking you here is one of my clocks in the living room, and this walking here actually is me walking through my bedroom. But I also sometimes use sound effects from, what do I use actually? Artlist. But there are many platforms out there, so they're all kind of good. So for this one, actually, I had this room tone electrical buzzing, humming, which sounds like this. Ooh. And I made this very low, because you sometimes have that from bathroom lighting, this buzz, you might know it. And that's also something like, always have a room atmosphere. And then, okay, for this scene, I really went into details with the sound, because if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis, you might know that it also involves hearing weird buzzing sounds or electricity and like weird whispering or even screaming. I didn't go for the screaming here because I thought that'd be too distracting, but I did add a lot of buzzing and whispering and things like that. So
No.
you can hear that.
Not again. I can't move. Don't panic.
And so that's how I went through everything, basically. There are lots more of details, but for this first tutorial, I wanted it to be like a rough overview of how I do it. Okay, the music. I did this in Ableton Live. If you're a musician, you might know that. For the sounds that sound like strings or a synthesizer, I used this little gadget. It's called Ferrous, and basically it's little magnets that are on a spinning plate, and it spins like so. It spins, and if you point it on strings, like for example the guitar, the strings would start resonating. And that's what I did with my piano mostly, which is over there. I made two of them and then stereo, so it sounds more. And what I always like to do is export the video and put it into my recording system. So whenever I want to record, I put this image onto my iPad and I can see it when I'm sitting at my instruments and find the right sound while looking at the images, which is really nice. And I guess that's how you usually do it with composing film scores, but it's so easy nowadays. I keep doing this until I feel like that's all it needs. And for this, I actually initially had planned to use much more synthesizer, but then with Ferrous, I felt like that's already sufficient. That's already doing what it needs to be doing. And there's just one synth section where it's getting more scary, like here. And then here again. But that's basically it, so you have it like this. Yeah, you've seen it. Okay, I think that's it for this first little overview. Got much longer than I had expected. But yeah, you can always skip sections that don't interest you. Anyway, as I said before, if you have any questions regarding what I just said, leave it in the comments and I'll try to go into more detail in future videos. And once again, if you haven't done so, subscribe, hit the bell. You know that the algorithm loves it. All right, thanks again. See you next time. Bye.